to his more America First policy.
But why the hell did he start this mess with Venezuela in the first damn place?
Examples of that, not just here in Venezuela and South America, but across the world, overseas, in the Middle East and beyond. Peter.
A variety of good points there, Monica. I would just punctuate it with another from the president earlier to Fox News today, saying that the U.S. would be, in his words, very involved in the future of Venezuela's oil industry, as we've been reporting.
Of course, all about the oil. Why am I not surprised?
Sanctioned oil tankers there, the first one of which was seized by U.S. forces, brought back to Texas, where the president said it was his presumption that the U.S. would in effect seize that oil as well. The president also made note of the fact that others, including China, will still have access. He said, we're going to allow people to have oil. I bring up the topic of China, as we'll be keeping eyes on as well, because notably a special envoy from China was in Caracas meeting with Nicolas Maduro. The most recent pictures we have of Maduro with the and I think that is a backdrop to all of this that we're going to be watching as well. Monica, I'm going to ask you to stay with us for a second. If we can, I'll ask the control room, if you can put up a live picture right now. Our teams, there you are. You can see one of the photographers in the room. Our teams are now inside the Mar-a-Lago property, the South Florida estate of President Trump, where he has been spending most of the Christmas and New Year's holiday. Last night was seen in a photograph there. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, among others who were there. We do expect to hear from the president. Initially, we were told by him that he would be speaking at roughly 11 o'clock, obviously, on the East Coast. That time has come and gone, so we're going to stay with our live developing continuing news coverage in advance of his remarks. But I want to bring in for a second, if I can, our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson, who is joining us now. Hallie, reporters will be invited into this room. To face a lot of questions from a lot of reporters, many of them on behalf of Americans and other lawmakers, asking for better understanding about the rationale behind this, the authorities under which he is operating right now. What are some of the top questions in your view that remain to be answered and that you think we're going to hear hopefully some better understanding of in the next few minutes?
You're right, Peter. A slew of them, as you've been covering now for the better part of just about 8+ hours or so here live on the air. Two of them, I think, relate to what you and Monica were just discussing. To your point about the interplay with China here, to the majority of the oil that Venezuela exports to China, how does that come into play for the president here? What about the squaring of this latest action with his campaign promises of no new wars? But I would say, first and foremost, we've got to get, I think there are still some real questions about the basic nuts and bolts of what exactly has gone down here.
Yeah, what happened and why did it happen?
Who does President Trump want to see lead Venezuela? To your point, he said earlier today that he wanted to see the U.S. have a more vigorous role in the leadership of that country. Is it the opposition leader? Is it the vice president of Venezuela currently, who, by the way, has asked to see proof of life of Maduro? What about the congressional authorities here? Who did you notify, and at what point in the operation, after it had already begun? Where does this go more broadly, Peter? Colombia could be next, the president had previously warned. You heard him this morning talk about Mexico and obviously the U.S. fighting trafficking and cartels there. Are those ominous indications that perhaps U.S. intervention in those countries is next? Is the president merely, so to speak, riffing, answering questions on that front? And then, of course, his response to some of the pushback that we've already seen from some of the critics of this action from the president, not just on the left, the Democratic left here, but including from some of his own party, Peter. And I'll send it back to you with that as we keep an eye here on the president's news conference set to begin, we think, shortly.
Hallie Jackson, our senior Washington correspondent. We're going to take a quick pause right now. My colleague Tom Yamas is going to pick up our coverage on the other side. An NBC News special report begins right now.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Tom Yamas.
And good morning. We are coming on the air right now with breaking news. President Trump is set to speak at any moment now about today's large-scale U.S. strike against Venezuela. It's been about 9 hours since multiple explosions rattled Venezuela's capital of Caracas. Since then, President Trump said the U.S. captured that country's leader, Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife, with both of them flown out of the country. And the Trump administration officials saying they will face criminal charges here in the U.S. It comes after months of pressure on Venezuela, including a huge military presence that's been building in the Caribbean. The interception of 2 Venezuelan oil tankers, you'll remember, and strikes multiple of them that killed dozens of people on boats accused of drug run. The president also saying today that in the final days before the strike, Maduro wanted to negotiate, but President Trump, was done negotiating. At any moment at Mar-a-Lago, we're expecting the president to walk out and to take the podium. We will carry those remarks live. For now, as we wait, I want to go to our senior national security correspondent, Courtney Cuby, to walk us through the attack and the eventual capture of Nicolas Maduro. Courtney, this attack happened under the darkness of night. We understand this was supposed to take place a few days beforehand, but because of weather, they decided to delay it day by day, and then they decided to strike early this morning.
Yeah, but notably, one point on the weather chart that I've been struck by is the fact that there was actually a pretty full moon last night, which generally special operators like this don't want. They want as much darkness as possible that does not include a full moon. But you're right. Officials telling us that, in fact, the president actually authorized this action days ago, more than a week ago, and it has now been essentially an hour-by-hour wait to see when the final go-ahead would happen. We now know, as you mentioned, that it started overnight last night, now about 9 hours ago, these first explosions. We don't have a whole lot of detail about exactly what the U.S. military component was here. The president, in first announcing this on Truth Social, called these U.S. strikes, not airstrikes. A couple of the assets that we know the U.S. has in the region include
let's keep it a buck. Trump did all this over oil.
Those are missiles that can fire and strike in a very
oil. And that's why Trump did this. Over fucking oil.
That means that they can fire them from far enough back that those that are doing the firing, the ship itself, is not necessarily in danger should wherever they're trying to strike, try to counter-strike against them. But the social media videos that we have been seeing do appear to show U.S. military helicopters. It looks like U.S. Chinooks. Those are generally people movers. It wouldn't surprise me, Tom, if we learned that President Maduro and his wife were put on those, or some of the U.S. officials who went in for that ground operation went in on those Chinooks. We also know that the 160th Special Operations Unit, that is of course, you may have heard of them, the Night Stalkers. They were involved in the raid that took out Osama bin Laden in 2011. We know that they have sent additional assets to the region in recent weeks. Now, it could be that they had some of those up. They have things called Little Birds. They're small, fast, low-flying attack helicopters. It wouldn't surprise me if we heard that they were involved in this in some way. And then we are also seeing indications that there may have been U.S. Ospreys up. It wouldn't surprise me again if those were also used to carry Nicolas Maduro and his wife out of the country and potentially to bring U.S. troops in. But one of the biggest questions that we have, we're hoping we get some fidelity from President Trump and others at this news conference in only moments, is exactly what authorities were used here. So in other words, who was the lead on this operation? If in fact the justification, the legal justification, was to go in and take out Nicolas Maduro because of the indictment against him for narco-trafficking and other alleged offenses, then was the U.S. military used for that? And if so, under what authorities? Again, Tom, the other thing that is we're really hoping we'll get some answers on is the U.S. military in this took strikes on a sovereign nation's military. These were Venezuelan military locations that were targeted in some of the video that you see here. What were the authorities under which the U.S. took those strikes? Senator Mike Lee tweeting that Marco Rubio explained to him that the justification for that was to protect the U.S. officials who were going in on the ground, to make sure, essentially like a shaping operation, make sure that they made it as safe as possible for those U.S. officials to go in and take Maduro out. But what was the actual legal authority of those? Those are the kinds of questions that we hope to get to President Trump and officials this morning.
And then, Courtney, as we get those granular details and as they come in, we may or may not know them, we have to also talk about sort of the intelligence of all of this, right? Because within hours of striking Venezuela, they had the leader of that country and his wife in custody, being brought to the USS Iwo Jima, which was there in the waters off of Venezuela. That's incredibly fast. Usually, sometimes in these situations, these heads of state, they have safe houses that they run to, that they hide to. This all happened very fast.
Yeah, it really opens up the question about how the U.S. had such great intelligence. And I think one of the questions, or several of the questions that will be posed to President Trump this morning and to his officials is, were there conversations that were ongoing with Nicolas Maduro himself, with those in his inner circle, that helped the U.S. pinpoint exactly where he was going to be at that exact time? And what was it U.S. intelligence? Was it U.S. military intelligence? Was it a combination? How did this all come together?
All right, Courtney, stand by for us. I do want to go back to Peter Alexander because the big question now, and there are many of them, but the big question right now is who is in charge of Venezuela, right? The Trump administration has been accusing Venezuela of being a narco state, of Maduro being a puppet for the cartels, essentially being a meeting point for the cartels to ship out cocaine around the world and to the United States. But right now, it stands to reason to think the vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, who has been a student of Hugo Chavez first and then of Maduro, would be in charge. But, Peter, right now it's unclear. And the president has come out today saying that he hopes whoever takes over Venezuela, whoever's in charge, goes in a different direction than Maduro.
Tom, I should tell you, as you're speaking to me, I'm hearing from our colleagues on the ground at Mar-a-Lago that we now have a 2-minute warning, which means we'll hear from the president now in just a matter of moments. So I'll keep this very brief for you, but I would say that is high on the list of questions is after the operation that has proven successful clearly to be able to capture Nicolas Maduro and his wife, what other plans were already in place? Who is governing that country? Is it Maria Corina Machado? She was the former or the longtime opposition leader there. Her name may be familiar because she recently won the Nobel Peace Prize and had a remarkable departure from that country where she accepted the award overseas in public. Separately, a lot of real questions about what takes place now going forward, what the U.S. has done to try to better secure the situation on the ground there to ensure that there is some form of a peaceful transition. Venezuelans are still waking up to this dramatic news. And then finally, and separate from this, I think there are going to be a lot of broad questions about the TikTok, exactly how all this came to be this morning, and about the president's sort of policies around the world right now. The president who came to power with a desire, he said, to end wars has now initiated strikes in many countries: Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Nigeria, Somalia, now Venezuela as well, in addition to the Pacific and the Caribbean. All the questions top of mind for me as I await the president's remarks moments from now.
All right, Peter, you stand by for us as well. I can tell you we are coming to you live tonight, or I should say today, from Miami, where the streets, especially in Doral, where our studios are, people have been celebrating there in the streets here in Doral, Venezuelan Americans, and then Cuban Americans and Nicaraguan Americans as well, hoping that this could somehow lead to a domino effect in the Caribbean, in Latin America, where leftist dictators are taken out and new governments, hopefully, are reinstated. This is Miami right now in Doral. You can see the Venezuelan flags flying there. There's been influx of Venezuelan immigrants, some saying up to 700,000 over the last 5 to 10 years. People fleeing Venezuela because of the economic hardships there, because of the lack of human rights in Venezuela. We should remind you that Maduro was accused by the UN of killing up to 5,000 dissidents, imprisoning anybody who did not agree with his political policies, and torturing them as well. So for many people in Venezuela and here in the United States who have sought refuge, who are political refugees, this has been a very important time. You can see there are tears in people's eyes. They have been celebrating on the streets of Miami. Since these strikes were first announced, we were awoken early this morning, and I have a lot of friends and family in this area, and the phone was just kept ringing, people asking questions. What does this mean for Venezuela? What does this mean for the people of Cuba as well? Again, we can't get too ahead of ourselves right now. The president has just said they've taken out Maduro because he was wanted, he was indicted, not once, but now twice, from what the Attorney General Pam Bondi has told us, for being an agent of the cartels, for being, in their words, a narco trafficker. He will stand trial in the U.S. and he will get his day in court, and he will have attorneys provided to him if he can't pay for them, and he will have a say in this. But for right now, he is in U.S. custody. It is unclear who is leading Venezuela at this hour. If indeed it is more members of the Maduro regime, if it is the vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, who has been there, who has been asking the international community for proof of life to make sure Maduro and his wife are still alive. We have heard from Russia and other countries who are supporters of Venezuela, who are allies of Venezuela, saying they condemn the actions that have happened here. The UN as well has come out and said that they did not agree with how this was handled. You can see the explosions, the eruptions. This was the attack earlier this morning in Venezuela, right there in the capital. And from the moment those missiles launched, at some point within hours, they had the leader of Venezuela in custody. The president has said that Maduro, at the end, was trying to negotiate, but he was done negotiating. The vice president has come out on X posting that they offered multiple off-ramps to Maduro. Again, they've been in this region for months now, striking those boats they say are carrying drugs from Venezuela to the United States. The threats have been made. There apparently were negotiations up until last week between the president and Maduro. That, according to President Trump. But at this hour, President Trump was done negotiating. I want to bring up moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, who's joining our special coverage as we await the president. We do want to remind you, at any moment we're going to watch President Trump come in. Kristen, this is an interesting time in our country's history, but it's also an interesting
Very
time
interesting time.
administration. That's what they campaigned on, and now we have a strike in a foreign country, in a country that has been accused of sending drugs by the tons into the United States, but has never attacked our country. And now we have a military operation, and leaders in that country has been taken out by U.S. forces.
Tom, you're absolutely right, and what is so striking is that we have seen cracks begin to form within the MAGA base as President Trump has escalated his pressure campaign against Nicolas Maduro, against the Venezuelan regime, and now, of course, this reaction just pouring in. It's coming in largely along party lines right now, Tom. We should say that. Democrats highly critical, saying that this is illegal without congressional approval. Congressional leaders, Republicans, supportive. But look at this from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She, of course, had a very public break with President Trump, in part because of his focus on foreign policy, which she says goes against his America First foreign policy. Here she says, Mexican cartels are primarily and overwhelmingly responsible for killing Americans with deadly drugs. If U.S. military action and regime change in Venezuela was really about saving American lives from deadly drugs, then why hasn't the Trump administration taken action against Mexican cartels? And then listen to this part of her post, Tom. She says, this is what many in MAGA thought they voted to end. Boy, were we wrong. As the baby boomers slip away, both in voters and power, the electoral future will be decided for candidates that focus on American economic populism and promising prosperity for Americans only. Really strong words there from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. And Tom, just to zoom out a little bit, let's remember what President Trump campaigned on, what that America First foreign policy was all about. He campaigned on getting Americans out of foreign wars. That was part of the inaugural address that he delivered when he said that that would be a part of his vision. And so part of why you're seeing these cracks begin to form within the MAGA base is for that very reason. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of those with the loudest voices, saying that her constituents care about the economy, issues like health care, and that this runs counter to those critical promises that were made. So I think questions moving forward, will Congress be briefed? When will there need to be congressional approval for any future action? And what, if any, reaction will we get from the rest of the MAGA base, Tom?
Yeah, you know, Kristen, we're about to go to Kirsten, but Kristen, you know, I had an opportunity to speak with Maduro years ago. I interviewed him inside of Venezuela, and his belief was that President Trump never wanted him out. It was others around President Trump, people at the time like Senator Rubio, now the Secretary of State, who were the ones sort of whispering in President Trump's ear to get Maduro out. And now this has become a reality, and we know that Senator Rubio is now Secretary of State Rubio, who's been charged with multiple jobs, including intelligence as well. Talk to me about that relationship and the role that the Secretary of State played in all of this.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Rubio had his sights on Venezuela, the concerns, the criticism of Nicolas Maduro, and look at what we have seen from this relationship between President Trump and Secretary Rubio. Remember, they were fierce political rivals back on the campaign trail in 2016. Now, of course, brought into the fold in this second Trump administration has become, quite frankly, Tom, one of his most trusted advisors. When you ask President Trump about the future of MAGA, who should take the baton, he talks about the vice president, but he also talks about Secretary Rubio, and I think it really underscores the strength of that relationship, Tom.
Okay, Kristen, stand by for a second. We are waiting for President Trump to walk out at any moment at Mar-a-Lago to take the podium. We're going to bring you those comments live as they happen. We also want to let you know that President Trump has released what we understand is video of Maduro in custody and also some video of the attack. We're going to have those momentarily. As I mentioned earlier, Keir Simmons is part of this coverage as well. Keir, I want to go to you. At the time that the United States has just taken out the leader of Venezuela, they've been trying to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine. This incredibly complicates both those negotiations, and also it leaves sort of, I don't know what it is, I don't know if it's a vacuum, but there are questions about who's in charge of Venezuela right now, and what role does the U.S. play in that?
Yeah, it's hard to find words, isn't it, Tom? And it's not surprising because we haven't seen an intervention, a US intervention in Latin America like this since the 1980s. We do know, though, of course, from more recent history that regime change is unpredictable. Once you remove a leader in a country, what happens next? That is in question, and members of Maduro's regime are saying that there is stability and that this didn't work effectively. So there are huge questions, and around the world, America's adversaries and allies will be watching and waiting to see what plays out now. There has been some criticism, significantly, from the French foreign minister, saying this kind of intervention is, effectively, he says, it is wrong, and I think that's striking in terms of the breaks in international diplomacy that we have seen in 2025. But if leaders around the world, Tom, didn't get the message in 2025, they're getting it now at the beginning of 2026. The Trump administration messaging quite clearly, you must bend to our will. And as you say, questions from many, many countries, not least Russia. President Putin was very close to Maduro. They are allies. What does this mean for Russia? Is this a weakening of Russia? Is this effectively, a strike by the Trump administration against Russia as well as against Venezuela, against Russian interests? Certainly, in the U.S. national security strategy at the end of last year, what we were told is that the U.S. believes the Western Hemisphere is its area, that it wants to assert itself, and it certainly is with this strike overnight. And that assertion is directed at Russia. It's also directed at the Iranians, who had a close relationship with the Maduro regime, and there are protests in Iran right now. What will the Iranian leadership be thinking? It's also directed at China. As Nick Alexander said earlier, we saw Chinese officials with Maduro just in the past few days. What message does this send? Because the Chinese were trying to say, this is our friend, don't usurp him. Well, that didn't work.
Kier, I do want to talk to you because you've done a lot of reporting about China's encroachment in this region as well. We can't talk about Venezuela and what's just happened and not talk about the oil reserves there. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. In many ways, feeding the countries that are not friends to the United States. The president has spoken about the oil that was taken, he says, by Venezuela that was U.S.'s oil from U.S. companies. This is going to complicate matters because it's unclear what happens with the oil production in Venezuela going forward.
Yeah, no question. And the Russians are playing a role in the Venezuelan oil industry as well. We should say, Tom, you can't just switch on the taps in Venezuela with that oil industry. It does have massive reserves, but it doesn't. It's not an industry that just can start working immediately. So the implications for the oil markets may be muted, and obviously just a counterpoint to that, this kind of destabilization, if you like, that can have implications in financial markets. We will see on Monday when that comes about. But you mentioned China. It's an important point. China has been encroaching in South America, in Latin America, particularly with rare earths, rare minerals. That kind of commodities, which are now so important to the world economy, and I think that the U.S. policy in the Western Hemisphere, that's a major point here too. A message again from the United States in the Western Hemisphere to countries around the world. We don't like you intervening in inverted commas, in our region. I mean, this is stunning. In some ways, though, it is not surprising, Tom. It does play into U.S. foreign policy in the region over decades and even over centuries. And I think from that history, what we do know, of course, is that you don't know what happens next. And that's what we have to watch for.
Again, we're waiting the president at any moment. He was supposed to come out at 11 a.m., but again, this is things are very fluid. We're going to bring his comments as soon as he comes on. Kira, I do want to get back to you. Venezuela now a region in conflict, right? You have a country that has no leader. It's unclear who is in charge right now. It's the vice president. You have an opposition leader who just won the Nobel Peace Prize, who is being celebrated across the world. You had another opposition leader, Juan Guaido, that was acknowledged by the United States going back 4 years as the true leader of Venezuela. And then you have the Venezuelan military, right, who is really holding the cards right now. But besides that, you have what is known as the colectivo, essentially neighborhood gangs that Maduro has armed so they stay loyal to him. Essentially, in Venezuela where there's no work, there's no money, there's no food, he has given these people food, he has given them weapons so they stay loyal to him. So you have the military and you have sort of these neighborhood ragtag gangs that there's been reporting now that they are actually protecting some military installations to give you an idea of sort of the military prowess, if you will, of Venezuela. It's just not there that they have neighborhood watchmen, if you will, armed with machine guns protecting their military sites. But it all speaks to who's going to be in charge and who's going to take over. And it sounds like President Trump, at least from now, is not pushing for a regime change. Even though he's taken up the leader of the country, he's saying whoever comes next, he hopes is not like Maduro, but he's assuming the vice president is in charge.
Yeah, and President Trump, and I'm sure we will hear it when we hear from President Trump in a moment. President Trump was asked earlier in an interview who will leave Venezuela, and he said, well, we're going to have to look at that right now. That kind of comment will prompt criticism from some that there needs to be a strategy here rather than simply just the tactic of removing Maduro. We have seen pictures of civilians on the streets in Venezuela.
And knowing Trump, he probably did.
And you're
he
right.
probably
If
did
you are
this
Venezuelan,
and no
sitting at
game.
home right now, cowering perhaps a little bit, wondering what happens next, and you are against the Maduro regime, you are trying to calculate whether if you walk out onto the streets, you will become a victim. Will you be supported by the US? Will those forces that Maduro built up around him that you so eloquently described, will they target you? These kinds of things we know because we've seen this kind of thing before, and you have to be careful with comparisons. But if you take, for example, the US experience in Iraq, where, of course, Saddam Hussein was removed, so that was regime change. What the US demonstrated was a challenge about who should run the country, how the country should be run, and a civil war. Now, again, you do have to be careful with these comparisons, completely different part of the world, but the principles are familiar, and the question of whether you can change a country, make it more stable, maybe even make it democratic, with kinetic power that doesn't involve boots on the ground is a looming question here. And of course, the US has tried boots on the ground before, and that in the past, in some parts of the world, hasn't worked.
Keir, stand by for us because we now are seeing these images that are stunning that President Trump has posted on social media. This is the former leader of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, in handcuffs. You can see those blacked out sunglasses over his eyes. He is wearing the earmuffs as well. He looks to be in a tracksuit, likely the same outfit they took him in custody, and we don't know that for sure, but it looks like he's been scuffed up there. You can see his hands there given a bottle of water. This is the first image we've seen of the former leader of Venezuela now in U.S. custody aboard what we believe is the USS Iwo Jima. Again, the president putting out this photo. He will stand trial, it appears, in New York. He was indicted in both the Southern District of Florida and in New York for charges stemming of drug trafficking, being a narco-terrorist, colluding with the cartels, allowing his country to be a meeting point, to be a shipping point for they said millions of tons, I don't know if that exact figure is correct, of cocaine coming out of Venezuela to the United States and around the world. His wife also taken into custody. And if you're wondering why his wife was also taken into custody, she has held many roles in Venezuela in the political hierarchy, once as Attorney General, once as the leader of parliament. Some have said she's as popular as her husband, Nicolás Maduro. So both of them have been taken into custody. Of course, Maduro rising to power after Hugo Chavez was dying of cancer. He was in his third term, 2 of his elections deemed completely illegal by the international community. Even his last election, more Venezuelans voting for the opposition party, yet he stayed in power as a true dictator in Latin America, building ties with places like Cuba, building ties with Russia and Iran and China, maintaining those relationships throughout. And he simply ran out of time in President Trump's side. We will hear from the president in a matter of moments. Our Richard Engel, our chief foreign correspondent, has been reporting from Latin America, from Colombia, when these strikes started. Richard, you've been watching all this information. You saw that image just posted of Nicolas Maduro. Not exactly the same story, not exactly the same case, but reminiscent of when they took out Saddam Hussein, a similar image. You know, these images are very important to President Trump as well. Again, two completely different situations, two different military actions, but the visuals are very similar here.
I think they're very similar, and I think it's no surprise President Trump is a little bit late in coming out to make his remarks. I think it's no accident that that image was released first. This is the image that President Trump wanted to show Venezuelans, wanted to show Americans, wanted to show the world. A dictator who stood up, who refused to accept President Trump's policies, who said no, and who's now in handcuffs with earmuffs on so that you don't know exactly, you won't know what is being said around him, won't know where he is. A man who went from a palace to now going to a courtroom and potentially a jail cell. A very powerful image, an image that will be seen in Venezuela by the people, but also by the leadership. I've been speaking to people today who've been involved in this negotiation process that has been both diplomatic and a negotiation process by force over the last several months to try to get Maduro to leave on his own. And what we've seen, and have been talking about all day, is this escalation. First, there were the attacks on boats. Then there was the seizures of the oil tankers. Then a land attack. Then ultimately a snatch and grab operation to take Nicolas Maduro. You were talking about the leadership. Right now, there clearly is a power vacuum. I was speaking with a senior official who was also involved in this negotiation process, this pressure campaign, who said the most important person in Venezuela right now is the Defense Minister Padrino, that he effectively is managing the country as it goes through this transition. We don't know yet if this was a successful regime change that will lead to a democratic future and a better future that could see the opposition leader, who was just awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, take power and a smooth transition, or if this regime change will lead to state collapse and civil war. It was a bold move. It was a successful military operation. The militias are still somewhat on the streets, but this was a dictatorship built around Maduro, around his cult of personality, and without Maduro, the military is much diminished. And that photo is clearly designed to impact people like the Defense Minister Padrino, to say, be careful with your next move. You should make peace with the political party, or you could be the next to get snatched and sent to an American warship and ultimately, most likely, an American prison.
And Richard, it's fair to say from your reporting in the region, you were in Colombia, the president's actions even today have left allies, have left enemies guessing, even confused. I remember speaking to the Colombian president. He came out on social media and said one thing about President Trump, and then you spoke to a defense minister, and they said something completely different.
This President Trump wants the region to be afraid of him. Talk about President Trump's unpredictability, and that fear is not.
Okay, Richard, I need to interrupt you. Richard, I'm going to interrupt you. President Trump is taking the podium. Let's listen in.
Appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we got some other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States.
Hopefully y'all can hear this.
Citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills 25, on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long.
How you gonna run Venezuela when you barely weren't running this country, idiot?
Until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. Then it has to be judicious, because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. And that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country, to their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. Decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it essentially until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans, hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now they'll be heading to ultimately New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. You all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang, Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide, and he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers of people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, when it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening, everyone's happy. they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives, they walk to restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard, I want to thank our military, and I want to thank law enforcement. Been amazing. Yeah, they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. It just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana, and we have done that. It was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing, and we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to have. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, that crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was a disaster, but it knocked out crime. But we're pulling out of there when they need us. We'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's why they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be
Why is he rambling?
Or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities.
Man's always
The
rambling.
place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they said raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children, they were in all of the cities I mentioned, Nicaragua, and they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. Will no longer be threats. For years I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst, they say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungari from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungari, what happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Nicaragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. It was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons, a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions, they sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers, they were drug kingpins, they sent everybody bad into the United States. But no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and sold American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people and turn us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries. And not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in the first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders, we will stop the terrorists, we will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until the United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation this morning. It's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's fantastic. Man, I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words.
President, can you explain how the U.S. will launch Venezuela?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Brazen-Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve. The most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around, and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman, Chairman Brazen-Kane, to give a few more details about the operation.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States, and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was a culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that frankly only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience in integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise, and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, that could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings, but when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air.
All stuff American taxpayers got paid for.
Thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. And there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He's not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognize him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
Make sure.
yeah, that's right. But
Don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do with the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when he tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this, we're going to take... This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out, and I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters, press conferences, and, you know, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States and the president.
The sooner y'all get off TV, the
I
better.
told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else and very happy, but instead he wants to play big boy. And so now, you know, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. But the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody. But don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that, I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Mr. President.
The U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
But we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but it's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have time. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there. And they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Can you explain the mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
It's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
That would run Venezuela.
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, you know, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it as can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well, I
going?
understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He's just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass.
And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is
Well,
about
he
that.
has cocaine bills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine, they're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his hands.
Did he notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice. And the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
If I can add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, you know. A lot of ships out there, they sort of knew we were coming. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
You were one of the only people who watched this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. You know, the safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the...
So in other words, he was trying to get to a bunker, just like the one you try and build it was, up under that ballroom.
By surprise, sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
So where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact
Well, eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
It's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victories.
Can you, how long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want Venezuelan people to come election?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. You know, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old, it's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country.
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to the oil and
China
drugs?
and Russia, Russia when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not. Probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that...
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
You're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace, and you're going to have safety, you're going to have justice, you're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. You know, if you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country, and they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms of, I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would happen.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military troops to provide?
That's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, you know, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly, we'll run it professionally, we'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay, and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, what have you done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're very protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people are going to, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want
That
to
makes no
surround
sense.
with energy. We have tremendous energy in that
This
country.
idiot
Very important we
can,
protect
is
it.
barely able to run this country, but yet he wants to try and run someone else's country. That is so dumb. My God, this is so dumb.
You know, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, you know, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, you know, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, you know, they were, you know, all the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, they basically, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba. They tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned. Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a big thing.
We've just
listening to President Trump's news conference at Mar-a-Lago. That's going to conclude this.
This is simply put, this is about the damn oil, plain and simple. It's about the oil, ladies and gentlemen.
NBC News Now, online at NBCNews.com, and a full wrap-up tonight on Nightly News. I'm Tom Yamas reporting today from Miami. We thank you for watching this special report.
Money coming out of the ground is very substantial, so it's not going to cost us anything. We will. Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure.
I'm gonna go to the Pascal show. Let's get it.
We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries, and we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So
translation: when Venezuela to take their oil.
Is going to be a great thing, and the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Are you going to send in U.S. military?
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well, I don't want to get into the conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
You said that Maduro was responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that?
Well, no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Unless
President.
it's a bad question, in
It's
which
about
case
Putin.
I'll go one more. It's about who?
It's about Putin. If you want.
About Putin. Well, that's always nice.
You had a phone
About
call.
Putin.
You had a phone call with him on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did you talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
Was that
I
intelligence?
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours. and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1 quarter, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace, so I only give 1 quarter. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not, and they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month 30,000? It was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions, we send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away, people. We're losing, but if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities, you know, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much.
Take over the country.
There's President Trump leaving after discussing the military operation in Venezuela. President Trump says the United States will take over Venezuela for the time being.
So in other words,
There
occupation.
is a group who is capable.
He can't even run this country, but yet he's gonna occupy Venezuela.
Fox 4
Make it make sense.
Okay, guys. Woo! Now that was interesting, don't you think? They said the quiet part out loud. They literally said the whole thing near the end. Not only were they like, well, we might start things with Cuba, we might start things with this place, we might start things with other places, but they also said, oh. Yes, oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, oh. That's all they were talking about. That's all they give a damn about. That's what they give a damn about.
That's
It's
the only
about
reason
the
they
oil,
did this shit
That's
in the
it.
first place.
That's it.
Was for oil.
It has nothing to do with the Fenty and the yayo being brought into the country. That's just the red herring. That is just what they say at the very beginning. That's what they were saying out here so that we can believe that and go, well, damn right, he's proud to be an American, right? But in actuality, he's like, no, it's about the oil. And we're
Quiet
gonna
part
regulate
out
that stuff, and
loud.
we're gonna sell it back to them. Ain't that insane? He said, I'm gonna cut out the middleman, and we are gonna be the only supplier, and therefore we are going to give it back. We're gonna sell it back to the country. So in other words, country, the U.S. is gonna make money off of the oil
Of Venezuela.
Venezuela actually has.
Make it make sense.
Come on, y'all.
Come on.
Come on.
Make it make sense,
I know
man.
some of y'all are like, damn right, Trump, do your thing. Some of you guys are applauding this. By all means, applaud all you want. It's fine. Okay? It is what it is. He did what he wanted to do, which he did it successfully.
Make it make
There is
sense.
going to be a full-on regime change now.
Yep.
And the thing is that now it is going to be, this is going to be American territory now.
Yep.
For the foreseeable future.
Yep.
Until they decide to relinquish the country back into the hands of the Venezuelan people.
Exactly.
Think about this. Yes, people are out there in Venezuela rejoicing. Absolutely. If you have a tyrannical piece of trash, butthole leader, yeah, you're gonna have people celebrating for sure. But they don't know what's coming.
They don't.
They don't know what could possibly be coming. Let me just say that, because we don't know what Trump is going to do. Let's be real. We don't know if he's going to riddle that place, suck the very essence of all the riches, minerals.
Nah, he about to bleed that country dry.
Suck it dry and then just hand over.
He is going to bleed that country
Here you
dry.
guys go. And it already has like 200,000 miles on it, and it's been ran through. That is a possibility here. America will go in. They will run this place. They will say what is good and what is not.
Yep.
They will, of course, eventually hand over the keys to the country to somebody else. But in the meantime, they're going to want to make sure
They're going to run the place into the ground.
every resource out of that country as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that they can stack up on the bread. And then in the meantime, they're going to try to find some sort of sycophantic, bootlicking individual that will bend at America's will
So hell
to
will.
run the country. They're going to make sure that person is particularly vetted, properly vetted, before they hand over the keys to the castle to that particular person running the actual country. Let's not forget, too, he even said, oh yeah, let's not forget that the person who is vice president of the country would most likely step up and take over Maduro's spot. But he said, I don't like that idea because Maduro elected, he chose this particular running mate as vice president. So this particular vice president should not be trusted either. So you already know what that means. That means that they're going to do a cleansing.
Regime change.
System.
Regime change,
Government
regime change,
system
regime
over there.
change.
And they're going to make sure that every single person that is elected or put into specific spots and slots and jobs in the government are bending at Trump's will. You got to remember, let's be real. We just heard even the head of military talking about everything, and he's just stroking Trump off in the corner. Real talk. He's giving us a lot of like technical military jargon that a lot of us are like, what? We went in now for 1769 and we went over here. We did the Hakeem Olajuwon, and then we came down and we descended upon them with the Nicki Minaj, and we're like, yeah, okay, good job. We don't know what the F that means, but okay, cool. But the entire time he's like, without him, it's just, without Trump, just jerking it off. Okay, I'm sorry. Strong game is strong with all these guys, right? Let's not forget Pete Hegseth. If around and find out. Just so you know. If around, you're gonna find out. Okay? We came in with the best and brightest. Like he's literally, I swear to God, it's like he watched the Game of Thrones before he went up on the podium.
Yeah.
These are strong soldiers, best warriors in the world, right? Very weird. Very much like, Braveheart, right? They'll take our land, but they'll never take our freedom, right? But I'm just expecting like war paint, him on a horse, just Mel Gibson and me through this whole thing. But no, he's just up there, just saying his thing. as he usually does, and it's always so damn intense. F around. If you F around, you're gonna find out. When was the last time anyone said that in a presidential presser? Ever in the history of ever? We live in some weird, crazy
Very,
ass
very
times.
weird
Okay?
times.
But it definitely pricked up our ears now, didn't it? We're all like, what did he just say? Did he just say F around and find out? Okay. Okay. We here. We here now. This is exactly what our life is now. Okay? We are in this time where everything's a mother loving meme. That's
Yeah.
all it is. Real talk. So here's the thing, guys. For those of y'all who are celebrating this move,
Ain't nothing but a Truman Show in real life.
gonna, does it mean that the price of gas, the price of whatever, is it going to be better for our economy? Hopefully it does. But at the same time, what they're doing, some will see as corrupt. Some will look at this and say, this is totally jacked up. Real talk. Some will look at this and go, nah, I don't agree with this. This is wrong. I leave that question up to you. Now, I have a poll pinned to the top of the chat, and I asked you guys, do you agree with this attack on Venezuela or not? But if you really think about it, he said, I just want to repeat this one more time. I might repeat it 15 times. I don't care, it's my show. But here's the thing. I love you guys, seriously. But here's the thing. He did say the quiet part out loud. All of it is about oil. All of it. He doesn't care about anything else.
You don't.
Clearly taking over Venezuela's regime, over their government. Now they have control over the oil. What did he say during his speech? He said out loud, we built this infrastructure for the oil, and then they just kind of kicked us out, and we're totally screwed. We're screwed. They screwed us over, so we came back. This has nothing to do with substances. This has nothing to do with that yayo, that white girl, that snow, that cocaine. Has nothing to do with that. Has everything to do with that liquid gold, baby. Has everything to do with it. So what did he say? We're gonna be pumping oil like it's never been seen before. Because they can't, they've been doing it wrong, right? So we're gonna pump more oil out of that that infrastructure that they have in Venezuela. And we're gonna really suck. We are literally going to suck the nectar. All of its resources, we're gonna suck it out as best as we can. And then we're gonna sell it back to the people. We've heard this before, haven't we? In many other cases before. But now we're seeing it at an all-time, at a larger scale. Right? Ain't that wild? We're gonna go in there, we're gonna infiltrate, we're gonna take their resources, and we're gonna sell it right back to them. But they won't know the difference, baby. But this one, we will know.
Yep.
They will know the difference. But they will sell it back to the people that it should rightfully be theirs because it's in Venezuela. It's their resources, not America's. But because we helped build the infrastructure, and apparently we got bumped out by Venezuela, by the Venezuelan government, this is why there's a vendetta that needs to be paid. This is why there's a grudge. It has nothing to do with fentanyl.
Oil.
But like I said, we've seen this in
Oil,
music,
oil.
right? It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna take the music and we're gonna sell it right back to the people that actually invented it and created it, right? We've seen this in other situations a billion times, but this time it is at a grander scale. Now it's liquid gold. And you know how it is. We live in a world where the oil is everything. This is exactly why I said in the very beginning of the show, why they're looking at Nigeria. It has nothing to do with Nicki Minaj sitting there going, yes, and so what they're doing to the Christians in Nigeria.
Okay, I'm just gonna end this right here. Anyways, Trump, is going to take over Venezuela and try and run it. God help us. See you later.